everyone. For this project, we're going to learn what it's like to be a full stack developer. So we're going to take a small project. Actually, it's a larger project, but we're going to take a small piece of that project and learn what it's like to be a full stack developer by developing on the front end, the back end, the database, and we're also going to deploy this to the cloud. And what we're going to be building is a landing page service. And I say landing page service instead of landing page because this is a larger system than a landing page, and we'll get into that in a moment. We have a fictitious customer that has requested this system, and so we're going to learn how to break that down into UML, which is Unified Modeling Language, and that's what these boxes and lines are here on this diagram. And so we're going to build a landing page service, and let's go ahead and look at an example of a landing page. You've probably seen these before, I'm sure you have. This one is for Shopify. So Shopify's landing page is quite simple. They have enter your email address here and start free trial, and then a little bit of marketing down below. So very simple and nice page. And we're going to build something very similar. As you can see here, we've got our simple page right there. It's going to look a little bit different because we're going to download a Bootstrap template. So what we're going to use for our stack, like we said, we're going to go ahead and do front end, back end, database, and DevOps, and that's where we're going to deploy it to the cloud. So for the front end, we're going to learn HTML and CSS. Now this is a mini course, so we're going to learn quickly how to do a full stack development. Bootstrap is what we're going to use for our responsive design. That allows us to have this site run on a phone, run on a tablet, and run on a desktop computer. And JavaScript will be our programming language that we use on the front end. Now for the back end, we're going to use Java as our programming language and Spring Boot for our application server. So that's basically our server. Google's Firestore is going to be our database. And we're going to also integrate an email service in there called SendGrid, and that'll allow us to send the automated emails that our fictitious customer is requesting. And then we're going to learn a build tool called Maven that allows us to manage Java projects, build them, run them, and then we're going to go ahead and deploy this application to the cloud. We're going to do Google Cloud Platform, and then we're going to go ahead and install the Google Cloud SDK on our local machine so we can issue commands to upload our application and update our application. All right, so now on to the description of the project. Now our fictitious customer has written a one-page description of what they want, so a few sentences of what it is that they're asking for. And what they want is they have some courses and some digital products that they want people who are interested in to be able to register for emails for updates on those products or launches or courses. So they want those emails to be automated. So the customer signs up for interest in a course, and they want to send an automated email to them that thanks them for registering and then sends out a scheduled series of emails to update them on when the course is going to be available, what the course has in it. So basically sales marketing emails on a scheduled fashion, automated, so it's pretty much hands-off for the customer. And since they have many products that they want to have, many courses, many digital products, they want customers to be able to register for several products if they want to. And that's why we call this a landing page service instead of a landing page, because it's going to service many landing pages is the idea behind the system. Now, one of the things is they want to tailor the emails to the product and the customer, so it's nice to be able to let them define the emails that they want to send out as a template, so that way they could tailor the emails for each product and customer, and so they can personalize it. They also want to have the emails stop being sent to a customer who was interested and then bought, and stop sending them sales emails, but then start sending them product emails, product update emails, new feature emails, and emails like that. And then they also want to allow the customers to unsubscribe when they are no longer interested in the emails. And also they want to track their advertising, where these customers came from when they actually did register as interested customers for these products. You can advertise on Facebook, Google Ads, email marketing, YouTube, web page. It could come from anywhere, and you kind of want to track that, and that's what this fictitious customer wants to do. So as far as the product itself goes and the description that the customer gave us, we turned it into UML. And Unified Modeling Language is what UML stands for, and it's a bunch of boxes and lines that describes a software system. Some software engineers use this to describe software so that they can keep track of what they're building, and if you're on a team, it helps coordinate the team. And if you have a customer, you could kind of describe the system to them and make sure this is right per their description. So let's go ahead and look at this based on what we read above in the fictitious customer one-page description. So they wanted products. So we've got a class here, or a square, that represents a product. Now, the diamond means one or many. And so in this case, a product can have several campaigns. So a product could be advertised on a web page, on YouTube, on Facebook. And so different campaigns need to be tracked so that the customer wants to know where these customers were coming from so they know which campaign was successful. Now here's the customization on the email template. So there's a template that can be customized by campaign, really. So each product can have different campaigns, and the email address could also be customized per the campaign, not just per the product. So it gets a little bit more detailed there. And then they want to be able to schedule a series of emails. Now, when the customer first signs up, they're going to send an email immediately saying thank you. And then from there, it'll be a series of scheduled emails that get sent to the customer. And then they want their customers to be able to sign their email address up to several products. So again, this is a collection that means many. So many emails can go to a product. So that's how we describe the system based on what the customer gave us as a description. And this should, everything on here plus these words should correlate to something that they described, unless we decided mutually to cut that out. Now, over here is the sign-up flow. So when they actually do click on whatever those ads are and come to this page, they're going to sign up with their email, click the button, just like on the Shopify landing page, and that email address is going to get sent to our server. The email is going to get saved into our database, Google Firestore, and then the automated email is going to get sent out, and they'll also see a message in their browser or on their phone that says thank you for registering, and then they'll start receiving the automated emails if we were to build the entire system. What we're going to actually build is called an MVP, and what an MVP is a minimum viable product, and that's the smallest thing that we can build that we can put in the customer's hands that actually provides value to them, and it also provides value to us. So the smallest thing we can do is cut out a lot of this detail and administrative things and just get their emails address first off, and then we could build the rest of the system. So we can trim the system down by building this part first and then filling in this part. We can do everything here manually at first, with the exception of the automated email that gets sent when they registered, because we want the customer to have immediate feedback and not wait for that email to come. So that one will get sent immediately, and then we can go ahead and fill in this system while people are registering. So this is the campaign flow over here in white that we will not be building in this lesson and course. We will build this in another set of courses. And then here's the simple sign-up flow, which is the one where they sign up and send their email down to our server. Now, from the workflow diagram, we go ahead and break that down into a task list. Now, these are the things that we're going to do to build the system. And we break that into a list so that we know, okay, we're going to do step 1, step 2, step 3, and when we're done with all the steps, we're going to have what it is that we wanted to build. And so we broke that down into a landing page service task breakdown, and we went ahead and broke down everything. Typically, you wouldn't do that because things could change as you learn, and maybe the requirements could change from the customer. You typically only need to design the MVP, and you might go a little bit farther than that. This is system small enough that we went ahead and did the whole thing so you can see what it looks like in full. Now, for the part that we are going to build, we're going to publish the landing page for a single product is basically what we're going to do. And here are the tasks to actually accomplish that. So we're going to get a application server up and running. So Spring Boot and Java will be installed locally on our machine just to get something running on our machine. And then we're going to go ahead and get a template from Bootstrap, free Bootstrap templates, and we're going to go ahead and put that into our server. Make sure it's all running on our system first, and then we're going to go ahead and upload it to the cloud on Google Cloud Platform. So this will be running on the cloud and available over the internet as soon as we get past step 2. Now, once we get to step 3, we're going to go ahead and customize it for our business or the business that we're building for our customer. And then we're going to go ahead and allow them to fill in the email and send that to our server, which will go nowhere at first, but that's where we're going to start, and that is the front end so far. Now, for the back end, we're going to go ahead and make something that receives the email and then puts it in the database. So we'll learn how to set up a database, which is fairly simple with Google Cloud Firestore. And then we're going to save the email address into the database. And then we're going to go ahead and come down here to the email response, send out the response email right away when they register, and then pop up a message on our landing page that says thank you for registering. And that is the functional MVP. Now you could go ahead and read through the rest of this where we process emails, have administrative sites, so we're going to want to be able to make logins. And these are in later lessons, so I won't go into too much detail here. You could read through this later on if you want to. And so administrative pages to allow our customer to log in to see who has registered for their products and see their email addresses. And then we get into filling in the campaign flows where we allow them to add products, add campaigns, add email templates, and schedule the tasks. So that is the full system described, and here is our MVP. So landing page, save the emails into the database, and send an email response. So that's the project we're going to be building. We're going to go full stack on this, and thanks for watching, and see you in the lessons. For this lesson, we're going to set up our Java development environment. Okay, let's install Java 11. Now the first step in setting up our Java development environment will be to install Java JDK. And the first thing we need to do is to check to see if we even have it. So we're going to open up a terminal window and run a java-version command. So let's go into our terminal and we'll paste that command in. And when we run it, we see that we have no Java runtime present. So we're just going to OK that dialog there, and let's go back to our instructions to see what to do next. Okay, if we did have Java installed, we would have seen something like this. What version it was and what runtime was installed. And since we don't have it installed, we ended up getting no Java runtime present as the message. So let's go ahead and install Java 11 following these steps. So we're going to go ahead and go to Adopt OpenJDK, and we're going to choose the defaults, which is the version Java 11 and the hotspot VM, and then we're going to follow the prompts once we download that release. So let's go ahead and open this link in a new tab, and here we are at Adopt OpenJDK, and you can see here already selected is Java 11 and the hotspot VM we wanted. If it didn't detect your operating system correctly, which it did here for Mac OS, you could just go to the other releases, and then you can see here that the operating systems are supported: Linux, Windows, and Mac OS. So let's go ahead and go back to what was detected for us, and you can see here that Mac OS was detected, and that's good. So let's go ahead and click on latest release, and that's going to download. Okay, that's downloaded, so let's go ahead and click on that once we've checked our instructions to see what to do next. So we're going to follow the prompts. So let's click on it, and it's going to open the installer package, and we're just going to go ahead and hit the continue button and accept the license. And then we're just going to go ahead and click install, and I'll have to enter my password. And then it starts installing. Okay, that's all finished. And we don't need it, so let's just go ahead and delete it. So now what we want to do is go ahead and run that Java version command again in our terminal window and see what we get now. So we'll paste, and there it is. Java 11 is installed just as we wanted. Okay, to help us build Java, let's go ahead and install Maven. Now, Maven is a Java build tool that helps us manage dependencies for Java programs and helps us with running the compile commands. And so it's a nice utility to use, and so we're going to go ahead and leverage that. It's very, very popular. So we're going to go to apache.org to download this, and then we're going to scroll down to the files section, and we're going to want to download the right binary for our operating system, and you can see what those are there. And then we're going to go ahead and extract the binary, and we'll use the command down here. We want to put it in use a local share on a OS 10 or Linux system. So let's go ahead and open this in a new tab. And here we are at Apache Maven, and we're going to scroll down to the files, and you can see the binaries that we had listed before. For Linux and OS 10, you're going to want to go ahead and install the tar.gz. For Windows, you're going to want to install the zip file. And so we're downloaded, so we're going to go ahead and see what the next instruction is. And what we have is the binary that we did installed. Okay, we did that. That's fine. Okay, now we want to go ahead and extract the source to user local share. So let's go ahead and copy this command. And back to our terminal window, we'll paste it in. And I have to enter my password. Okay, and so there it is, unzipped. All right, so the next thing we want to do is add it to our path so we can access it from anywhere. So in Linux and OS 10, you can create a symbolic link, and Windows has something similar. So we're just going to go ahead and copy this command, and we'll paste that into the terminal window as well. Okay, now that should give us the ability to run Maven from anywhere, and it's MVN, and we're going to run the -v parameter so we can see what the version is. So let's go ahead and do that, and we see that Apache Maven 3.6.3 is installed, and that's exactly what we wanted. Okay, now let's install Visual Studio Code. It's a nice code editor. So the steps to install is we'll be going to visualstudio.com, and we're going to go ahead and download and extract the binary. And we can run it from where it is, or we can move it to our applications folder. So let's go ahead and open that in a new tab. Okay, so here we are on Visual Studio Code's page. You can see it automatically detected our operating system, and it would detect Windows and Linux as well. So let's go ahead and download that. And while it's downloading that, you could look at their webpage. It's a really nice code editor. I like it. It's lightweight. You could use a full-blown Java editor such as IntelliJ's IDEA. But for now, let's just go ahead and keep it light, and we'll use Visual Studio Code. Okay, that's done downloading, so let's go ahead and click it to extract it. And it extracted into our downloads folder. So I can drag it over to my applications folder, or I could just go ahead and launch it from here. I'll click open. And now here we are in Visual Studio Code. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to want to do is go back to our instructions, and I like to work on the command line, and we did all these steps. So I like a command line launcher. It's hard to say. And so the keyword code will launch the editor for us. So let's go ahead and close that out. We don't need it. And Command-Shift-P opened the palette for me on OS 10, and I'm going to type the word code even though it showed up on the top there. It might not show up on the top for you. And that installed code on the path. So if I type that word, it'll launch this editor, and that's typing it in the terminal window. Okay, the next thing I want to do is install the Java extension pack since we'll be developing Java. So again, I'm going to do Shift-Command-P to open up the palette for all the commands, and then I want to install something, so I'm going to type the word install, and then we see install extensions. I like that one, so I'll click it, and now Java is what we want to install, and the Java extension pack is the one that we want. So let's click the install button here, and it's going to install several extensions for us. I got a pop-up message that said something about Java in my workspace. I'll click later on that. It's because I've done this before. You probably won't get that message. And now we got a message that says that we're in lightweight Java mode. Now, we probably want as much help as we can get. So switching to a heavier weight mode will probably work better for us, but I'm not sure about that. Lightweight mode might be enough, but let's go ahead and put us into a heavier mode that gives the editor the ability to help us even more. So I'll click on that, and then it says, are we sure we want to switch to standard mode? And yes, we do. Light mode would be for those who are more experienced. And I have a Docker message on there. You might have that too. You just close all the messages that don't have any relevance. All right, so we've got the extension pack installed, and it looks like we're all done here. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and set up a Spring Boot application. So back to our instructions, we've got how to set up Spring Boot. We're going to go ahead and use the startspring.io web page, and we want a Maven project because that's what we installed, and also Java because that's the language we're going to be using. And then there's a couple things here that will use the defaults and some changes to them as we go ahead and set this application up. So let's open that in a new tab, and here we are on Spring Initializer. And so we want a Maven project, and we want Java. That's what's already selected, and the default version is fine as well. Okay, going back to our instructions. Now, for project metadata, there's a couple things here. Now, the group is typically our reverse domain, and com.example is good enough since we might not have one, and that's the default there, and that's great. All right, the next thing is the artifact, and that's typically the application name, whatever you want to call it. Let's just call this one my dash application, and we use dashes in between the words just so we can read them easier. And that's our artifact, so that's what it's going to get compiled to in Spring. Okay, and then going back to our instructions, here's our human readable application name, and my application is fine for now. This is our first application, so let's go ahead and just stick with something simple for now. You want to come up with a better name for whatever it is that you're building, but this is just a tutorial, so let's go ahead and keep it simple. All right, and then for description, let's just call it my first Java web application. And again, you're going to want to be more descriptive when you create this. I don't actually know where this shows up. It must show up in a description somewhere. Okay, so now we've got my application set up, and let's go back to setting up our description. And you're going to want to be more descriptive than my first Java web application. And I don't actually know where this shows up, but let's go ahead and paste that in there. And again, you want to be more descriptive. And for our package name, now this is the group plus whatever the application is, and you'll notice it put in a dash. And for Java package names, we don't want a dash. For one thing, a dash will show up as a compile error because it's assuming it's a minus sign. So let's go ahead and correct that to remove the dash. And then we want our packaging to be jar, and we want to choose Java 11. So let's go ahead. Those are the defaults, and that's good. And back to our instructions. The next thing we want to do is we're going to create a web application, so we want to add a dependency for web. So let's click on the Add Dependencies button, and we'll just type in the word web in the search. And there's Spring Web, so let's install that. And then we're going to go ahead and click the Generate button, and that will generate and download our application. And it downloads fairly quickly. And so it gave it the name that we picked. And then we can move it to the folder of our choice, excuse the helicopter. Or you can just extract it wherever it is. And then we'll use this Maven command to run it. So let's go ahead and probably just keep it where it is downloaded, and that's fine too. Or you can move it to whatever folder you want to. So I'm going to go ahead and open the terminal window and go to my downloads folder. And then I'm going to unzip the My Application zip, because that's what got downloaded to us. And there's the name there. So I could just start typing and hit tab, and that'll finish the name for me. And then it went ahead and extracted all of that application. You can see there's several files that it generated for us. And we'll just go ahead and change directory into My Application. And now that we're there, you see a few Maven commands. Since we're using Maven, it gave us the commands that we'll need to run. And this is how we'll run it. So Maven Spring Boot run. All right, so it's going to go ahead and download some of the dependencies and then launch. Now, it's fairly quick application server, especially when it's a small application like this, and it's running on port 8080. So what we're going to want to do is open up another tab, and we could just click on this link here to make it handy. All right, and open it in a new tab. So it's on localhost :8080. And you'll see here we get an error message right away. So the server's running, but we're getting an error message because we didn't actually set anything up yet. And so that's going to be the next thing that we do. Okay, so now let's go ahead and add a response to our application server. So we got an error message when we were in the application before when we downloaded Spring Boot. So we're going to want to head and open Visual Studio Code. And we could just go ahead and type the keyword code once we get into our Downloads My Application folder. And that'll show that that command's working. So we're going to type the word code, and that's going to launch the editor, and we put dots to say here. So we're in the code editor now, and I had it open, so it just went back to where we left off. So let's go ahead and close these tabs. We don't need those. And now here we are in the downloaded application that was generated for us. And for Java, it's source main Java, and then our reverse domain. And then here is the Java application, and there's the word we gave it, My Application. So it created a Java class for us. And what we're going to want to do is replace the code that's there with the code that's here. And so there's just a couple additions in this code here, and you can see the comment for lines that were added. So don't worry about what those do now, and excuse the barking dog if you can hear that. And we're just going to paste that in, and you'll see the added comment lines here, and we'll explain that a little bit later in more in-depth tutorials. So what we're doing here is just installing or importing in some library code to go ahead and do mappings to say /hello and respond to that. And then we'll be responding with the word hello world, words hello world. And so when we run this, we're going to Control-C first in our terminal to stop the running program, and then we're going to rerun it. And actually, since we didn't have it running here, we're just going to go ahead and launch it. If you did have it running, you would just use Control-C to stop it. And then we could go ahead and run our Spring Boot command again with Maven. So Maven Spring Boot run. Don't forget the dash. And now it'll launch with that new application code in it, and then we'll have a default response. Now that default response, remember, was at /hello, so we're going to want to enter that in. So let's go back to our browser. We'll open this in a new tab, and you see the /hello there. And when we open that, our page now says hello world instead of error. So we're done with this one. And there's the valid response that we saw. Okay, now let's set up our cloud environment. So the first thing we need to do is create a Google account. So let's do that. So we're going to set up a cloud environment. We're going to create our Google Cloud account, and by going to cloud.google.com, we'll open that in a new tab. And here we are over here with a Get Started for Free link. And we'll click that. And then log in with your Gmail account if you have one. Otherwise, you can create an account down below. And here's the link there. All right, and then I'll have to enter my password. Okay, now that I'm logged in, I have some steps to complete. I went to go ahead and create my account, so here's this. And agree to the terms and service, and I hit continue. And then I'm going to go ahead and just show what all this is, and then I'll pause the video because it's got personal information in here. So I'm an individual. And here I enter a name, an address, my city and state and zip, optional phone number, and you want to put a credit card on there for billing, which it's free for now, but then eventually they'll start charging you. You get $300 of credit for free. Okay, so I went ahead and entered all my information, and now I'm at this screen. And that's it. So now we're going to go ahead and install the Google Cloud SDK. So the next step, after we went ahead and got started for free with the sign-in button, we're going to go ahead and check for Python, because the Cloud SDK from Google needs Python. So we're going to run a similar command, so python-v, and we'll just go ahead and copy that. And we'll Control-C out of our running application, and we'll cd to our home, and then we'll go ahead and run that Python command. Okay, so I have version 3.7.8. Now, let's assume that I don't have Python, or I want to install a version, because typically your system will have 2.79 on it if it's installed. So I upgraded to 3 at one time. So now I'm going to go ahead and pretend that I don't have Python installed, and I'm just going to go to python.org and do a download, and let's see what the latest version is there. Okay, the latest version is 3.9 at this time. So let's go ahead and download that. See if we scroll down, we've got the other version, so we could go ahead and download other things, but we're just going to go ahead and go with the latest. When we're done scrolling, you can install specific releases. And actually, I think the Cloud SDK said 3.8 was the highest. So they don't support 3.9, so we would download 3.8. Now we want the one for our operating system, which is OS 10. So we'd want to install that one. For Windows, you're going to go ahead and get the Windows installer. And for Linux, you'd get one of the tarballs up above. And we'll go ahead and click on that to continue the install, and the defaults are fine, so I just keep hitting continue, accept the license, and then we'll go ahead and install. So remember, I had 3.8.7, so this is going to install 3.8.8. So I'll input my password, and then the install will happen. Okay, so that install finished. So I had 3.7.8, so now we're out in 3.8. So let's go ahead and run our Python version command again and see what we have. And now we have 3.8.8, so now we're on the latest of .8 as of the time of this recording. Alright, so then the next thing we're going to do is actually download and install the SDK. So we're going to want to open a browser tab to the quick start for installing, and it's going to download an installer for us, and then we'll run this command to do that. And we like to do all these things in a terminal window. So let's go ahead and click on the Quick Start link, and we'll open it in a new tab. Okay, so here we are in the Quick Start, and at the time of this recording, it's 3.3.3. We already did the Python version check, and we're going to go ahead and install the package for our operating system, which is Mac OS. So let's go ahead and click on that to download it. And then we'll open up a terminal window and extract the contents of the folder. We're going to put this in our home folder. So we'll go ahead and unzip it or extract it, depending on what operating system you're on. And then there it is right there in our downloads folder. So let's go ahead and move that with the terminal window. So we're going to CD into the downloads folder and into the Cloud SDK. And we're going to list all the contents there. And let's just go ahead and leave it where it is. It's fine. And so we're just going to run the install from here. So we follow the prompts and run this install sh command. So let's go ahead and copy, and we'll paste that into our terminal, and then we'll run it. All right, we'll say yes, because we want to go ahead and let that go. Oh, I actually said no. I don't want to give any information. So then this is all the packages that can be installed. It's a couple of instructions here we don't need to be concerned with right now, and then there's a way to update the components. So we're just going to go and hit yes there to let that install in our path. And everything's been updated from what it says here. So let's see what happens now. We're going to exit the terminal because we need to restart it. And we're going to initialize gcloud. So let's go ahead and copy this command. And in a new terminal window, we're going to type gcloud init. And we must log in to continue. So when we hit yes here, a browser window is going to open to ask for our credentials. So I'm not signed in right now, and then I just go ahead and click my password. And these are the permissions that the Cloud SDK needs. And so I'm just going to allow that. And here we are authenticated. So now we can run commands from our terminal window, and we're authenticated already. So you can see here it's actually giving a list of potential projects to set to. So I have some projects here already. And so I'm going to go ahead and select one of the existing ones. Okay, I selected Copper Canyon, but what I actually wanted to do is go ahead and pick our landing page service or create a new project. So I'm going to do that offline. Here's help if you ever want to run this, but we don't need to do that right now. It just shows that the gcloud was installed. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and deploy our application. And we do that by changing into that My Application folder that we downloaded and ran before, where we had Hello World running. And what we would do is run gcloud app deploy, and it'll deploy to the project we have selected. So I'm going to go ahead and change directory into that project. And it's My Application. And then I'm going to copy the command that we need to do the deploy. So gcloud app deploy. So just paste that here. And then you can see here I changed the target project to one of the existing ones, which was landing page service, and I did that there, and I did that while we were off recording. You could just create a new project if you don't have something existing, which you probably don't. So now it's going to go ahead and update. And we have an error here, which is, it sounds right because it's a new project that I created, and I haven't done anything to enable it yet. So I need to enable an API, and what it's telling me is here's the URL to visit. So I'll just copy that and open that in a browser. Okay, so now we've got the Cloud Build API. We need to enable this so we can actually build our application. And we'll also need to enable billing. So I'm going to select a billing account. You might need to set one up. So let's go ahead and set the account for that, and then Cloud Build will be enabled. Now, it's not going to charge you anything because you have all the credits on there, but you do have to set up billing just to make it work. So now, once this API is enabled, we can go ahead, and so there it is. We can disable it up at the top there, but this is now used to do our build. So if we run this again, it should work now. And we'll hit yes again. Okay, so now it's been deployed, and we can go ahead and browse our application in the cloud by running gcloud app browse, and we'll just paste that here, and it'll open a new browser tab for us. And we get the same error page that we got before because we need to append the hello path to it. And there it is. So now our application is running in the cloud. Hi everyone. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to publish a website. So we're going to go to free Bootstrap themes, startbootstrap.com, and we're going to grab one of their templates and download it, and then we're going to use our gcloud app deploy command to push it back up to the cloud again. So let's go ahead and open this startbootstrap.com in a new tab, and they have many nice looking themes here to start with, and we're just going to go ahead and pick one that looks like a good landing page, and that's this one right over here. So we'll click and then click the free download button, and that's going to download to our machine, and then we'll click on that to extract it, and it extracts to this folder here, and we're going to open that folder and then copy the contents. So 4 items to copy, and then we're going to move that into our My Application folder that we downloaded before, and that's going to be in the folder, then source, main, resources, and we're going to paste it in the static folder. So we just drop them right there, and there's index.html, and then we're going to go ahead and restart our server. Okay, we're up and running, so let's see what our website looks like now. Just go to localhost 8080, and there's our new website. And it's got a couple extra things here, and we're going to modify this in a later lesson. And then we'll just use our gapp deploy command that we used before to get the original site up, and that'll do it. Welcome to lesson 3 of the Full Stack Cloud Developer pre-course. What we're going to do today is modify that static HTML site we deployed. And we're going to do it using Google Chrome tools. It's a way to edit in place. If you're not familiar with HTML, we'll be able to take a look and see how things work without having to be too familiar with it and actually figure it out. So let's go ahead and go to our folder. I'm going to show you how to open this in the browser. So we're not going to use a server this time. We're going to go ahead and just open it as a file. So we're going to navigate to the resources folder and static, and then we're going to just open index.html as if it was a file in the browser. So you see that the URL says file instead of what it usually says, which I guess is internet. Okay, so on the page I just right-clicked and hit inspect, which opens the Chrome developer tools. And I'm going to shrink this a little bit so we can still see it in the format that it normally is, with this thing now open on the right side, taking up some of the space. So I'm going to click on the selector tool, and it's going to allow me to click on elements. So you can see as I click,
it opens up and shows me the HTML element on the right side, and it's taking me to the exact location in the HTML. So even though I'm not familiar with it, I can click on an element and it'll take me right to it. Let's go ahead and change this one just to see what it does. So I'll type right in place, and then when I'm done, I'll just hit enter, and you'll see it changed. So let's go ahead and pick another one. And let's do the sign up or sign in. So we're not going to have a sign in, so let's go ahead and just delete that. And now it's gone. So let's see what's next. Let's change that text. So you can see I could just click on the element that I want, and then I go ahead and edit it in the HTML view over here without really knowing the HTML, so to speak. I know it enough to get in here and to change the text that I want. And that's really all I need right now while I'm learning. Let's change this button sign up to something else. How about notify me? Okay, and let's see what else do we need to change on here. So we're editing in place. Okay, so now we're in some CSS too, because that sometimes you can really get involved with this tool. And so you can see that we want to change the background image, and where it's coming from is that background CSS rule. And just by changing that, you can see I was able to remove it. So that's the one we want. So let's go ahead and find a different image. So I'm going to go to, I'm just going to type in pixel images, and that brings me to pixels. And I'm just going to search for some photo, something about coding, and we'll just pick what we want here. Let's do this one. That's kind of a nice color. And then let's go ahead and pick a 1080p sized image. Doesn't need to be super huge. And once that's downloaded, we'll go ahead and move it from our downloads folder, and we'll put it in our static files. Let's change the name first. Okay, and then we'll go to our home folder and then our workspace, and there's our project already open. So we'll go to the static files and put it in images right alongside of the other one that's already there. And this one's going to be bg-coding. So let's go back to here and with that CSS rule, and let's go ahead and change it. So instead of masthead, we're going to call it coding. And look at that, we just changed the image. Okay, so let's see what else we can do in here. Let's change that. It's hard to read our text. So if we change the opacity, that one doesn't give us anything. And so you can see how just changing the number kind of makes it brighter or dimmer. So 5 isn't good. 7, okay, let's go with 7. It's readable and not as bad as it was. All right, so now let's change a couple other things. So we're going to go ahead and change text like we were doing before. We just click. This is an H3 tag, and we're just going to change the title here. Let's see, create what? Create wasn't good enough. Let's go with runs in the cloud. And let's go ahead and change the description below it, and that's a paragraph tag, and we'll just type right in there. Let's do create applications that run in the cloud, and you see that changed. Okay, so now we've got an icon. Having a screen icon probably isn't what we want, so let's go ahead and jump into the CSS file itself. And you saw how I did that. I just went ahead and clicked on it, and it brought me right to it. And so doing a search for cloud, shows me that there's a cloud upload icon. I don't know what it looks like by looking at this, so let's just go ahead and change it in place and see what it looks like. So you can see where it says icon screen desktop. Let's go ahead and replace that with the one that we just copied. And that looks good. So there's a cloud. So let's do the other two now. And you'll see I'm just pointing, clicking, and typing. So editing in place is nice because I get to see what's happening at the same time. Now there's other tools in Visual Studio Code that allows you to do this. You can install a plugin, and we would be typing our HTML and actually just see it in a browser that's running on our right side. But this is a way to do it without an editor, and it's kind of fun because a lot of people don't know that this tool is available in their browser. Firefox has this as well. And let's change the last one. All right, so these other things they don't really need. It's a simple website, so let's just delete some of these. We don't need this one either. Actually, let's keep this one, and we'll let it go across the whole thing. We don't need the image, and then we can get rid of the other two. Let's go ahead and just delete those. So we're going to delete them from their row. As you can see, you can click on the image and then just kind of go up and see what gets highlighted. And then when we get the one that we want, it'll fully be highlighted. And then we just hit delete. And you could always Control-Z to get it back. All right, we don't want this one either, so let's just go ahead and find this. That's a section right there, so we can delete the section. And now we have a footer down here, which needs to be modified to match what we have up on top. Let's go ahead and change the text. Let's say ready to get started and sign up now for 40% off the registration price. Okay, and same here, we want to go ahead and match our image. We could do a different image, but let's go ahead and keep it the same. So there's that image, and we called this one, I think, BG coding. Yeah. All right, and then let's change the opacity. Okay, we found the overlay that's above it, and that's at a 3. That's not good enough. I think we use 7 up above. Yeah, so that way we can read it a little bit easier. All right, and so that's our page. Now we just have to save it. So we can copy that whole outer HTML if we want. And then in the sources, we can actually go to that index.html file. Now, it's unfortunate that you can't just hit Control-S like you would in a file to save. In this tool, you actually have to be in the HTML file. So I had to copy and paste it to save it. So that's in there. Now, the CSS file we are in because we're actually jumping to it. So when we save that, it actually saves to the disk. Okay, so let's take a look at this text here. First, let's see the CSS minified file. It's all in one line. That's how you can tell it's minified. So we want to change this section. Let's make it the course outline, or at least a course description. Course outline sounds good. Let's do that. And then let's give it a description. So something to describe the full stack developer course. Something that gives motivation for wanting to take it. So we're going to say that we leverage Google Cloud to serve web applications. That's got to change from server to serve. Now these applications can grow in complexity as we develop our skills. We'll fix the typo later. All right, so now let's go ahead and find a table. So Bootstrap is what's being used by this template. So let's go ahead and go to Bootstrap tables. Do a search there. And so you can see in Bootstrap, they have various table formats. So that one, here's black. The other one was kind of plain. There's a header option. I like the plain one, really. Simple. And it probably fits better with a course outline. So here's what we're going to do. This was kind of crazy. We copied the table from Bootstrap, and then we're going to go ahead and edit this whole tag as HTML, and we're just going to paste it right inside the div. So where that description is, we're going to paste that table. And then when we put it there, there it is. It showed up. So now we're just going to modify some of the table things the same way we've been modifying the other HTML elements. So we really don't need that first column, and it's an outline, so we really only need 2 of them. So we're just going to get rid of some things in here. We don't need that. We don't need the... It's going to narrow it down to those 2 in the middle. Okay, so now we've got 2 left-aligned columns to deal with. Let's call this one lesson, and let's call the other one time. So that'll be the time of the video. Let's put a class on this to align it right. Okay, so then we've got that. So the lesson's going to be on the left side, the time's going to be on the far right, and then we're going to do the same thing with the other rows in here. And we're going to have more rows in this. So let's just go ahead and do the ones that are there, and then we'll add more as we go. So text right is a Bootstrap class that really just aligns the text right. We'll learn about CSS later on. And let's see, let's go ahead and change a couple of things now. Instead of mark, let's make this one lesson 1. And we'll just make something up on the time. Let's just say it's a minute. These are just placeholders. We're just learning how to put a table in here. Doesn't have to be accurate. So lesson 2 is 2 minutes, and then lesson 3, 3 minutes. All right, so that's how we make an outline using a table. Now look at how it's really pushing too far over. We don't want that kind of distance in there, so we need to make it match the sections above it. So something with the width. So we have to look in here. So we've got a call large 12. We're going to go ahead and modify that a little bit. And let's put a div around this table so we can give it a new row in Bootstrap. And we're going to justify it centered, so that way it sits in the center of the content. And then we're going to do another div for the column itself, and we're going to set that to a 12. Let's do it for 10. We're going to sit in the middle, so that way it'll sit inside and it'll kind of scrunch like an outline would in typing. or a PDF. So let's see what this looks like when we're done. Okay, notice how it now sits in. So there's 12 spaces total. We took one on the left, went in. We took one on the right, went in. So we're at 10. And now we've got a little bit of indentation there. So let's knock this down a little bit with the margin top. We'll learn more about CSS in the other courses and lessons. This is really about editing in this Chrome Developers tool more than it is about learning these other elements right now, just to show you what's possible. And I don't know if we'd actually, I actually use these developer tools all the time when I'm developing. I don't go to this extent where I'm editing a whole page, but I definitely edit sections and then I paste it into my HTML source files. It's very, very useful. So it's definitely worth learning. Let's go ahead and do a description under lesson 1 because it looks a little sparse this way. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, so a little bit of a description. It's not bad. And let's go ahead and set a margin because it's too close. 10 pixels. And then let's change the color a little bit too. So here I am changing the CSS on the fly for the element. That's one of the things that's nice, and that's what I really leverage a lot is the CSS editor in here, because that helps me style things, and then I can just copy it and then put it in my HTML file or my CSS file. It's a good way to learn too. Just crack open any website that you're interested in and start pointing and clicking and editing like we did for this template, and then you learn. And you can even move things. So I'm going to move this row up a little bit. Let's see. It's a little tricky. There's that line. See that line? All right, so we're going to do something with this. Let's see. We've got 2 lesson 1s. All right, so what are we going to do? An indent. Let's go ahead and set this one in as a sub a little bit. I'm going to edit the tag. Let's just do it here. So let's add padding left. And let's make it 40, and then we see how it indents in. So this is easier. So we'll just go ahead and do the same thing with the description. So right there, we'll just go ahead and add padding again. So indented in 40, and then we could see how we have a lesson and then a sub-lesson. We'll change the text on these two to make it make more sense. Let's go ahead and... So lessons have tasks. So this outline could actually get pretty complex and pretty filled in. We're just going to do a little bit light outlining here, but showing you how to do the indent as well. This one's task 2. And then same type of indent thing once we get the description matching. Okay, let's set the padding on these, and you'll see how now lesson 1 has 2 tasks underneath it. Let's go ahead and do the description too. That way it looks consistent. Okay, there's a course outline. Change the time just to make it look different. Okay, so that's our outline. And we'll go ahead and save this now. We're going to go ahead and copy the outer HTML. I'll copy the element. We'll go to sources, and we'll paste that in there and save it. And that'll save it to disk, so it'll be in our, we're going to save the CSS too since we did some changes there. I don't know what we changed, but we changed something. And even if we didn't, it's safe to save it so that we don't lose it. And if we refresh the page, now we'll see that everything stayed as it was. So we definitely captured what we needed to on disk. And that's it. Okay, so now let's go ahead and update the website with our new modified template. So that was going to the file. So let's go ahead and run back to localhost. And we see here that we're on the old page. So let's go ahead and Control-C the server. And let's go ahead and rebuild. So Maven clean package will go ahead and rebuild the project. This won't run it, but it'll compile it and then reassemble the files. And then let's go ahead and run it. And let's see what it looks like. There he is. So here's our new modified website, and there's our outline. So that's all good. So now let's go ahead and get ready to deploy our website. So back in the instructions on deploying your website, there's the command. Couldn't remember what that was. So let's go ahead and Control-C the running server, and then let's paste in that deploy command. And that's going to use our credentials that we set up in an earlier lesson, and it's going to deploy the new files, the new static website files, to our service. Okay, so it's updating the service now. That's done. It's going to split traffic, and then we've got our app browse, so now we can just go ahead and copy that and see what it looks like in the browser. Okay, so this looks the same as it did when we ran before, so what is different here? It's nice when there's a problem because then we learn how to fix them. So let's open up our inspect, and one of the things that's interesting is it's cached. So there's a cache over here. If you go to network, okay, so if we go over to the network tab, we see that disable cache is on, and so that's why we got our better response, because it avoided the cache by opening those tools. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Hi, welcome to Lesson 4 of the Full Stack Cloud Developer pre-course. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to send post data from our landing page to the server to save it in the database. The first step is to add JavaScript to our web page. Let's do that now. So we have our landing page, and we've got a notify button and an email address for the users to enter. And then when they click notify, you'll notice that right now it's not going anywhere, it's just going into the address bar. And that's the default behavior. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at this. So let's go over to the network tab, and that's already cleared. So let's go ahead and start over from scratch at the root, and then we're going to see what happens. All right, so we've got a fresh page, and you'll notice that the URL is just straight root URL. And then we're going to go ahead and post our form again and see what happens. So now you can see that it tacked on the form parameters, email equals, and our test email address. So, and it did a GET request. So it didn't actually post anything to the server. It just tacked it on and then sent a request to the server like it did when we hit the web page. So now let's go ahead and do an inspect. Now we see a form. Now a form is what allows us to actually post input data in our form to the server. There's other ways to do this, but a form is the basic way of doing it. So let's go ahead and open up the code. We're going to open Visual Studio Code, and we're going to navigate to our project. So I'll just hit open here. And then in VS Code, we're going to go ahead and open up the folder, and then under source, main, so this is a Java project. So we go into Java. Actually, we're going to go into resources because it's a static HTML page, and then we'll go to the Java section when we actually receive the email address request. So we're looking for a form. So there's the form right there that has the top, but there's two of them. So there's another one, and it's down below at the bottom of the page. So we've got a notify me, and we've got a sign up form. So we've got two forms on this page. So here's the notify me one, and down at the bottom is where the sign up form is. So we're going to want to see how we're going to submit this then. There's two of them. So we'll probably deal with one at a time. Let's do the first one first. We're going to set the action. Now the action is where it's going to send to the server. So what address is it sending to? So it's the domain / something. And that's where our server is going to listen for the data to come to it. So let's go ahead and clear this out again and just get back to the root request. All right, so now we've got an action of notify me. Now when we do the network post request, let's see what happens, or the network request, let's see what happens. So we get an error. It did go to notify me, which is good, but then it tacked on the email address again to the end. So default behavior 404 is what our server responded with because we don't have a notify me receiver yet. So we have to actually make one. So that's the error. So let's go ahead and let's see what we do next. So, and it was a GET request. So we actually want to send data over a POST request. So let's go ahead and change our form, and we'll add the method, and we want the method to be POST. Now there's different methods for sending a form. There's POST, which is basically creating data or sending data down. And that's the one we're going to use here. Okay, now it's a POST request. Let's see what happens. So let's clear it, and then let's send this request. Okay, now you notice that it didn't tack the parameters on. A POST request sends a body to the server. It doesn't put it on the URL, the requesting URL. But it did go to notify me, and there's the form data. It's sending our email now in form data. So let's go ahead and take the next step. So we've got, let's clear it out. And we're going to go ahead and got our method, a post, and then we've got the form down below here. We're going to add some script. And so our script is going to actually help us post this form data. But first, let's just see that our script is actually even doing anything. So let's call a console log just to see if it works. We're just going to keep iterating. So this is an iterative method. You go ahead and add something, add the simplest thing you can to see that it's working. And in this case, it'll be a console. And then we'll go ahead and start filling in more and adding to it, iteratively improving it. All right, so now we know that the console log works in our script. And we notice we have jQuery up there. So let's go ahead and see how we can leverage jQuery. What we're going to want to do is see if the document is ready, so that way the elements have all been rendered and they're available to get our email address from. Notice how Visual Studio Code is actually helping us define the ready function, or the ready function for us there. And then so document.ready is jQuery thing, and then the function that we're going to use to process it. Again, the simplest thing we can do, let's go ahead and do a console log to see that it's working. So when document's ready, let's see what happens there. And then let's see, notice how the ready is up above this. Let's see which one gets called first. This will be interesting. So let's go ahead and run this. Refresh the page, and you'll notice that the statement on the bottom actually printed before the other one. That's because the document wasn't ready yet. So when the script ran, the document wasn't ready. So now let's go ahead and add a form submit function. Okay, so now in our document ready, we're going to process our form. So this jQuery, getting it by the tag like this, is going to retrieve both forms, and however many are actually on here. So when any of these forms are submitted, so we've got an on submit, when any of them are submitted, this function is going to run. And again, the simplest thing we can do is a console log statement. So let's do that. Okay, let's see what this looks like when we run it. We don't need that anymore. We know what's going to happen. So let's go ahead and refresh our page and then submit this form. Okay, so we've got the 404 because we don't have the server-side receiver yet. And I didn't see that our console log came out. It might have flashed, but then the 404 took over. So let's go ahead and see what this still is doing. Let's go back to the root, and let's try this again with a breakpoint now. Okay, so it is here. It's just that it's getting overwritten by the 404 when it comes back. Now 404 means document not found, or resource not found on the server. So we don't have one yet, so it's telling us that it's not found. So you see there the breakpoint's there, and then if we continue to run it, it gets replaced with the 404. All right, so let's go ahead. This is telling us now that we are sending something to the server, and our form is submitting, which is its default behavior. So grabbing the event and doing a prevent default will prevent the form from also submitting. So what we want to do is just have this function run, spit out the console log statement, and not actually submit to the server. So let's see what happens when we run this. All right, so we'll go back to the root and refresh our page. And when we submit this, we've got our prevent default, and we can just go ahead and clear that breakpoint and then run it through. And now we've got our form submitted and the page stayed, which is exactly what we want. We don't want the page to change. So that prevent default stopped the form from doing what it would normally do by default. Okay, so now what we're going to do is use JavaScript to post data to the server. So let's see what we do next. So we'll go ahead and just add a comment here. Then we're going to post the email address to the server instead of posting to a new page. And let's go ahead and do a search in a new tab. And we're going to look for the fetch API for JavaScript. And that's going to help us. I like MDN, the Mozilla Developer Network. They have really good documentation. So there's the fetch API. And let's go ahead and see, they have good examples too down below. And so there's a good description of what this is, and you can read about what the fetch API is and what it actually does. And so jQuery has an AJAX function, and we're going to go ahead and use the fetch API instead. So let's go ahead and find a good example that matches. So here's one where it's going to send a response, or send a request and then get a response. And then here's where we're supplying request options. There's a post method that's kind of looking like what we want. Let's go ahead and see if there's something down below that matches a little bit better. Uploading JSON data. That actually sounds pretty good. So let's go ahead and copy this one. So we're going to copy that and paste it into our function, and then we'll modify it. Okay, so let's get the input field values from the form, which is our email address. So let's go ahead and put in a comment, and we'll get that. Okay, so using jQuery, we could go ahead and set a variable, and let's call it form. So let's go ahead and grab our form. So $ is the alias for jQuery here, and then we're going to do the current target, which could be either of our forms, right? So current target will get us the form that actually got called here. And then let's go ahead and set a variable to the form field that is called email. So find takes a selector, so we can use an ID, a class, and let's go ahead and see what we have on this email field on the form. That's the first one. So we've got a name. There it is right there, called email. And so let's go ahead and go down to the jQuery selector, and we can go ahead and capture that by name. So it's an input field, and then we're going to go ahead and do square brackets, and this is something we can search for. We'll learn more about jQuery later. So the name equals email. So we've got an input box that has a name equal to email, and then we're going to go ahead and get the value of it. And we're going to set that into the variable called email. And again, the simplest thing we can do here to see if it's working is we'll do a console log, and we'll send out, or we'll put the email in the log and see if this is actually working. So let's go to our page, we'll refresh it, and let's go ahead and enter our email and then hit notify me. Oh, we still have our breakpoint. Let's just go ahead and run that through, and then there's our form. Email's not defined, but our form is, and you can see length 1, so we got one form. And there's our console log statement, and there's our email, and it's going to print out right here in our console, so we know that that's working. So now let's go ahead and iterate a little bit more and add to this. So here's where we're going to send the data to the server using the fetch API. So let's go ahead and go back to MDN after we add a comment. So now send the email as JSON data to the server. Okay, let's go back to MDN, which we have, and we're going to go ahead and copy this. And that's kind of what we want there, so data, username. And one of the things to do when you're learning is don't just copy and paste. Let's just go ahead and type it out, because then we'll build muscle memory, and we're also learning, because copy and paste has a lot of statements in there that we wouldn't even remember that we pasted in. But by typing it straight out, we're going to learn, and we're going to build muscle memory on JavaScript and these functions. So here's the fetch API. So we're going to type fetch, and then it takes the URL. And the URL is where we're actually sending this. So form, and form has an attribute, and we're going to grab the action, which is the server side that's going to retrieve this. So notify me is what is on our form, and we'll go verify that. Okay, we want the method to be a post, just like it says in their documentation, and we're going to type it out. And you can use single quotes or double quotes in JavaScript. I prefer single quotes as much as possible, especially for things that don't change. Double quotes for things that may change. All right, so headers. We're going to actually tell the server that we're sending it JSON data as the content type. So we're going to type out the header content type, and then we're going to make it say application/JSON, so that way the server knows what the format of the data is that we're sending. Okay, and then next we're going to go ahead and build the body for our request. So the body, and then we're going to go ahead and use a JavaScript function called JSON stringify, which is going to take the data up above with our email and turn it into a string, and that's going to become our post body. Let's correct the indentation here. That's funny. All right, and then next, the server's going to send us a response, and we're going to get the response as JSON. So let's go ahead and add a promise receiver on here. So the fetch is going to return with this function on the then. So we'll go ahead and put then. And you'll notice I keep referring back. You're not expected to remember all this by memory. I never do. Okay, so we're going to call the response function JSON, which is going to return us the data. And then with that data, let's do the simplest thing that we can and see what it looks like in the console. So there's a function definition for data. It's going to pass data over to here. So we're going to go ahead and do console log and data, and we're going to spit out what the data is into the console and see what it does. Oh, first we have to do a catch, just in case something goes wrong. We want to catch the error. So you can see that down below. And then we're just going to go ahead and log that to the console as well. So console.error. And then we'll go ahead and put in what we want the message to be. Because if an error happens, we wouldn't actually see it unless we're debugging. So let's go ahead and see what this does. So there's where we're going to get our response, and then if an error occurs, we're going to come down here. Oh, and that was a comma, not a semicolon. That was a mistake. That's why it was nicely that the VS Code highlighted the problem with the little squiggly line. All right, so let's go ahead and refresh our page. And let's post this data and see what happens. Okay, so we get an error response 404, not found, which is good. And so the server said that it's not there. It doesn't know what notify me is. In our next lesson, we're going to go ahead and start filling out the notify me function. See you there. Hi, welcome to lesson 5 in the Full Stack Cloud Developer Preview course. In our last lesson, we were sending data from our web page form to the server, and the server was reporting it could not find notify me. So we're going to go ahead and add a notify me function on our server side. Let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so we've got our page, and here's where we left off, where we clicked notify me, and it went ahead and send, and we've received a 404 not found error from the server, and that's our code there. So now let's go ahead and jump into the Java folder, and we already have a service here from the previous lessons where we went ahead and set up this hello function. So now let's go ahead and create a new one, and remember we're sending a post from the form, so we're going to use a post mapping annotation, and then we're going to go ahead and set the address to notify me. And so this function is going to receive the post request, and so we're going to make it public, and we're going to return a string, and let's just call the function notify me in Java format, so no dash. We just go ahead and say notify me, and then use the parentheses. We'll take no arguments at this time, although we will be taking some shortly. Okay, so we're going to receive the call, and the simplest thing we can do here is just return notify me, and then we'll see what we get. So let's go ahead and restart our server. So we just go ahead and Control-C that, and then we up arrow, and that'll give us the command that we just ran, or just run Maven Spring Boot run. And now we're back up and running. So let's go ahead and post that form again and see what happens. Okay, we'll put in the email address and notify me. Okay, we've got an unexpected token in JSON. Okay, good thing we have an error, so let's go ahead and see what happened here. Errors are nice because then we learn how to fix them, because this is going to happen to you, and it happens to me all the time. So what are we going to do with this? So it looks like unexpected token. What does that mean? Let's see, we're returning a string. Oh, so we're expecting JSON because we're calling response.json on the client side, and so we actually need to send JSON formatted data. And so just sending a notify me string is not JSON. We need to go ahead and use curly brackets, a label, and then a value. So that's what we're going to do here, and then so we're going to just go ahead and hand type out this JSON. We'll be replacing this later. And we just go ahead and do that. Now the slash quote is escaping quotes in Java. So we want quotes in our return data. So let's go ahead and restart the server. And let's post that form again. Okay, there's our message. So now we sent something to the server, and we got a message back. And that's where our console log is. So now we're actually doing a round trip where we're posting and getting the data back. And that's our JSON data. So it's working. So now we just go ahead and iteratively improve this. So what do we need to do here? We're just echoing back a message that says that notify me was called. We need to do more with this. So let's see what the post mapping function is in Spring Boot, and let's see how that works. So the Spring I/O tutorials are really good. So let's go ahead and take a look at what it says in here. And what we're looking for is what parameters can we take. assuming that we don't know anything about Spring Boot. And even if you do, you're going to forget, because I do, and I don't remember what to put in there right now. So let's go ahead and take a look. And they have nice examples so that it'll tell us what to do. Let's just go ahead and search. It's a long document, so let's search for post mapping. And we see that it's imported there, and here it is. So similar to ours, this one's doing employees, there's a request body. So that's what we're sending, a body. So let's go ahead and get the request body. That's what we want. So it's an annotation, and then a type, and then a variable. So let's go ahead and put that at request body. And we're going to go ahead and call the type. Let's just do a map. So a map is a Java generic type, and we're going to say the label is a string and the value is an object. So it could be a number, it could be a string, it could be more JSON data, which would be another map in, as it would look to Java in this case. So then we've got a body. So now let's go ahead and use our body to see what our email address is. So we're going to do body, and this is a Java map function, so we're going to call get, which will get our label, and we're using email is what we're sending from the client side. And so we're going to get that, and now we've got an object here. So we're trying to put it into a string, and you notice that Visual Studio Code is telling us that we've got something that doesn't match. We're trying to put an object into a string, and so we can just add a cast or change the type. So the best thing to do here is just go ahead and let's take our map and just have it take a string, because we're only going to send email right now. If we ever have to do anything more in the future, we'll do that. But that's the simplest thing to do. Okay, and so email is not used. So let's go ahead and echo back our email and see if we're getting anything. So we've got a label, we'll call it email, and then we'll go ahead and echo back the variable that we retrieved. And let's go ahead and save this. Actually, let's do something different. We're in Java, so we could actually do something to send back the JSON formatted string without having to type it out ourselves. So nicely in Spring Boot, there's an object mapper class, which is from Jackson, the Jackson library. So we're going to go ahead and type in object mapper to see how it works. And it's Jackson data bind. So let's go ahead and see how to use that. And here's a nice write-up on it. And we'll see that it's already included in our in Spring Boot, so we don't actually have to import it. And here's how to use it. So we're going to get a new object mapper, which we kind of knew, and now we need to do write value as string and then pass it the object. And that'll go ahead and make it a string. So we're going to put our map in here. So let's go ahead and just call this, replace that with body. And then we'll set the variable to just return. We don't need the variable anymore, so we can remove that. And we actually don't need the email anymore either. Oh, we're not handling an exception. There could be something thrown there. So let's go ahead and let the IDE help us. And it's throwing a parse exception. And we don't need this line anymore either. So now we're just going to do a simple return what we got as a string, a JSON string. So we'll restart our server. And we'll repost the form. After a refresh, and let's go ahead and do that. So post the form, and we got back email and our data. So now we're actually getting round-trip JSON data. In this lesson, we're going to take the email address that we received from the post form that's sent to our service on the server and save it in a Firestore database. The first step is to set up our Firestore database. Let's do that now. So we're going to go to a new browser tab, and we're going to search for Google App Engine Firestore. And we see a quick start on getting Firestore set up. Go ahead and click that, and here we are at the quick start, and it's the same as the other documents that we've gone through in these lessons. where it walks you through and has buttons for you to click on to get to where you need to go to get everything set up. So we can go to the project selector page and make sure that we select our application. And there's our projects. So we'll just select the one that we are going to set up Firestore on. And we'll just go ahead and pick this one for now. I've already set it up on the other one, so this will show you the process. So I've clicked on that project, and now I go to the Firestore viewer to go ahead and create the Firestore database. So we can pick native mode or data store mode. Data store mode is, there's different modes, and so the one we're going to actually pick is native, because we just want to save native to the database. Data store mode does different things, a little bit more advanced. We don't need that right now. So let's just go ahead and select native mode. And then we're going to go ahead and pick our region. I'm on the West Coast, so we're going to go ahead and pick Los Angeles. And I sped this up. Our database is now ready. And if we wanted to, we could manually start a collection here, and it would be like a database table, and we could start putting in data. All right, so let's go ahead and go on to the next step. So we've already set our location, and we've already clicked the database, so that's all set up. The next thing we need to do is set up authentication, so we could actually connect to our database and put data in it. So we're going to want to go to the Create Service Account key page, and let's go ahead and do that now by clicking. Okay, and now on the Service Account key page, we're going to go ahead and select our project. And once we have our project selected, we're going to select Default Service Account. Then we're going to keep JSON the same, and then we're going to create this key. Now the key downloaded into a file, and that's what we're going to actually use. Let's go ahead and take a look at the key itself. So in the service account credentials, if we scroll down to the bottom, we'll see our service account has been created. And there's a fake email address that has the project ID and then the service account domain. And we can edit this to change the description if we want to. And then there's the key right there, but we're actually going to use the file on our local system. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to the quick start and see what's next. All right, so we went to that page and we did these steps. I don't recall seeing the role list, so we'll just skip that. It looks like there's a little blue box down below here that means that it doesn't apply to us. And then we did step 5, which is the create. So then let's go ahead and continue on with the next steps. We're going to use an environment variable called Google App Engine Credentials. We're going to set it to the path to that file that got downloaded. So let's go ahead and copy this. And then we'll head back to our terminal. And let's go ahead and export. And let's go ahead and see what this says now. So I actually just pasted it in, and it's going to say path if we actually echo this variable out. And to echo, it's $, and then the variable that we set. And we see it says path. Now that's not what we want. We actually want the path to the file we just downloaded. So let's go ahead and erase path. And I'm going to take the quotes off so that way it fills in, and then I'll put the quotes back. It's just a little trick to make it easier because I'm hitting tab and it's filling in the folders for me. Alright, so now we've done that. And the next step, there's that, where we set the path. And then, let's see, we're going to add the server client library to our application. So in our app, we're using Maven, so it's an XML file. And we're going to copy these dependencies into that file. And this is to add the database. So the database is Google Cloud Firestore. It's a layer over the top of the database that we'll be using. So let's go into VS Code. And let's open up our project folder. So there's our capture service project. And then we're going to navigate to the POM file, which is in the root folder right down at the bottom. And this is already generated for us. We're just adding to it. So Spring added all this stuff. So we're just going to paste it in. So it had a dependency management section, I believe. Yeah, it did. So we're just going to copy that. And we're going to paste it above our dependencies that are here because we're going to have to paste it in the right places. So dependency management is going to stay there. And then this dependencies we already have, so we're going to go ahead and remove that. And now we've got the Cloud Firestore sitting on top as a dependency, and then the dependency management section has the libraries BOM bill of materials. And there we go. So we'll save that. And what's next? Okay, and then we need to initialize the Firestore. So we're using Java, so this is where we actually add some code to our Java file. So pasted that in there, and then I'm using the tool, so it's doing a quick fix. So that actually just imported the Google credentials because now we have it in our Maven POM file, which allows that library to be there. Now here's our project ID. We're going to want to grab the project ID for our project. And it's actually email capture service 3. But let's go ahead and see how we get that. So there it is there, and that's the ID. So we can go to the dashboard, and we'll be able to copy and paste it more easily. Maybe it's not the dashboard. So there's that. So okay, so we're just going to type it. There is a place where it's easy to copy. So let's just type it in. Okay, so that gives us our project, and it's going to set the credentials, and that credentials is going to look at the environment variable and use it there, pointed to that file that we downloaded, and pointed that variable at the environment variable. Okay, and so now the IDE is telling us that we have an exception we've got to throw, and then it nicely fills it in for us. And now it's saying that that function is no longer used, or never used. That's okay, because we're going to use it soon. We'll just leave it like that. So we've got Firestore options, we've got the project set up, we've got the credentials pulling from our file, and then we're getting the service which we're going to call DB. So it's Firestore DB, which is sits over the top, and we don't actually need this variable, so let's just go ahead and return the service, which will just return the Firestore database. All right, now we're going to go ahead and add a collection to our database. All right, so back over in the App Engine, we're going to scroll down to Firestore and click on that. And you'll notice our email capture service 3 is the project. So we just click on Start Collection and just give it a name. We're collecting emails, so let's just go ahead and call this Collection ID Emails. And then we'll go ahead and save, and that's going to add an empty record. So if we'll just delete that one because we really want the collection, we don't want an empty record. So now we've got an emails collection, and now we can use this. So now let's add a record to that collection. Okay, so we're scrolling through the quick start. There's a section here on how to add a document. So we're going to put data in here. So we could probably just copy and paste this one into our code. I don't recommend copy paste. It's good to go ahead and type until you get used to doing this. So we're going to go ahead and look at what's there and start typing it here. So that way we get used to what we're typing. Okay, so the IDE is helping out, and it's saying, okay, set a variable, let's call it DB. And then we hit dot, and then here's all the functions that are inside the DB. And we're going to set the collection to emails. That's the collection we're going to save things in. And then we're going to go ahead and do a document. And we're going to give it a key name. So we've got a body that we're passing the email in, and we're going to go ahead and say we want the key because it's only going to be one email per record. We don't want any duplicates. So setting this document name to the email will make it so we only have one. So now we've got a document, and then we could go ahead and add to the document if we want to. So we're going to go ahead and set, and we'll just set it to the body. which the body contains our email as a map. And then we're going to go ahead and do a save in here. So we've got a future that writes the result. And let's call this data for the return type. And then with data, we're going to do a get on the result. And then we're going to get the update time, the time that the record was updated. And we've got another exception to throw. And then let's just go ahead and print this out. It's just to let us know that it actually went to the database. All right, and then we're still returning the body back as a string, a JSON string, with using the object mapper as we learned from the last lesson. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this, see what happens. Okay, so we got a record back, so that's good. Let's go check the database and see if our email's in there. And there it is. Thanks for watching. Hi, welcome to Lesson 7 of the Full Stack Cloud Developer Preview course. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to send an email from our server to whatever email got entered into our form, letting the user know that they've been registered. So let's go ahead and see how we do that. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is set up an email service. So we're going to send an email to this address here when they register. So let's go ahead and take a look. Where would we want that? So we're going to add it to our notify me method. And so let's go ahead and do a search on App Engine, Java 11, send email. And then first document that shows up. Second one looks good too. So this is sending messages. So they've got a couple of services that run with App Engine. They've got Mailgun, Mailjet, SendGrid is another one. And you can also do SMS and voice as well. All right, so let's go ahead and pick one. They're all pretty good. We've used SendGrid before, so let's go ahead and use SendGrid. We have 12,000 emails we could send a month for free. So let's go ahead and pick SendGrid. And we'll start with the free plan. And so they have various plans here. 12,000 emails is more than enough. So we'll just go ahead and accept the terms. And then we understand subscription will be renewed, but luckily it's 0. So then we subscribe. I have to speed this up. Okay, and now we have to activate it, so we'll just register with SendGrid, and it's going to pop up another browser window, and then we go ahead and register. So just put in a username and a password, and then our email address. So I'll use Full Stack Cloud Developer, and then go ahead and enter a password. Then confirm the password, and then I'll enter the email address that we'll be sending emails from. And it's fullstackclouddeveloper@gmail.com. Okay, and we'll accept the terms of service. Okay, we're all good. So let's return to Google. And now we've got a SendGrid module in our App Engine project. So that API has been enabled. It's green. And so we need to do some other steps here to get set up. And so we're on the free plan. And then here's some code. We are using Java, however. Okay, now in the SendGrid API, we're going to go ahead and do a search for Java code. So we'll type SendGrid Java API. And we see here that SendGrid actually has a Java code example available on GitHub. And then the next thing is that we need to set up an API key. Here's some code right here as an example. So then let's go ahead and set up our key. So open this in a new tab. And then we'll log in. And I used Full Stack Cloud Developer as the username, so I'll need to change this. And my password. Okay, and then when I log in, I'll get to the SendGrid dashboard. All right, since this is the first time we're logging in, we have to tell SendGrid a little bit about ourselves, or myself. So I'll just go ahead and enter the information here. So company name, I'll just make it Full Stack Cloud Developer. New website. Don't really have one yet, but this is what it'd probably be called. Phone number's not required. I'm going to say I'm a developer, not going to send very many emails, and don't have very many employees. And so now we'll get started and we'll be able to start sending emails. We need to get our API key first though. So we're probably not going to use that one. Let's see. The email API. All right, we're going to use the web API, so let's go ahead and click there. And then it's recommended, so let's click that and see where it takes us. Okay, this looks like something we would use. There's Java, so let's go ahead and choose Java. Okay, now we have detailed instructions. So make sure we have Java installed, and now we need to create an API key. So let's give it a name. And we'll be using this name in our application as well. Something simple. SendGrid API key sounds good. And then there's our key. And they conveniently have copied it down below for us here with what we're going to need to paste into our terminal so that it sets up the environment variable for SendGrid API key. So when we run it locally, it'll actually work for us. So let's copy that. And then I'll open a terminal window. And paste it in. Okay, and let's see if the value got set. So I'll do an echo on that variable. So the variable was $ in front and then SendGrid API key. And there's the key setup. Okay, great, so that worked. Okay, what's next? Now we need to install the package. Let's see, not very detailed here. That's a Gradle thing. We're not using Gradle, we're using Maven. So we'll talk about that, but they only have the Gradle instructions. We actually need the dependency XML for a Maven POM file. So, and there's the code we will use, but we'll need to import the SendGrid classes in first. So let's go ahead and see, there's Maven. So let's go ahead and do a search for SendGrid. Oh wait, okay, hold on. They have their GitHub repository. Let's go there. They probably have an example or something there. So on the README down below, we've got a couple of things here. And so it's telling us how to set up. Okay, we already did that. Okay, and then they've got the same example that we saw on that other page, and the same example. Oh, they have a couple more examples. All right, so still not a Maven POM file XML snippet. Okay, let's just go to Maven Central here with the link they have, and we'll click on the latest, and then we'll just copy and paste it right here, or copy it, and then we'll paste it in our code. All right, so let's go to our Maven POM file, which is in our root folder, and same as we did for Google Cloud, let's just go ahead and paste it right underneath there, and then we'll change the formatting a little bit. Don't need the comment, and then we'll save the file. Okay, now let's go ahead and create our first email. Okay, let's see, what we need is that code snippet now. So let's go ahead and go back to their README file because they had more examples. Let's see which one the best one is. So this one is with a helper class. It looks pretty good. And that's the one that they had on the other page too. So it's going to send a from email, which is nice. So we'll probably just go ahead and copy this one. That looks good. Okay, put that in our buffer, and then let's go back to the code. All right, so somewhere around here, we're going to want to go ahead and send an email. So after it's been written to the database, let's go ahead and make an email function, and we'll pass the email to it. So send email is the function name, and email is the parameter that's going to it. And we'll go ahead and extract this variable out, so that way we can reuse it. So it's going to be used here, and it's going to be used there. So let's go ahead and refactor it to pull out the variable, and let's name it email instead of child path. All right, and now we need an email function. So let's go ahead and use autocomplete to create this method. Okay, so that did that. So let's paste our email code here, and then we'll modify it. All right, we have a couple of imports to bring in. Luckily, we have that Maven SendGrid import, so it'll have all these classes for us. So email is the first class, and then content's another one. And all I'm doing is hitting command dot, and it's bringing up a list of things to do. And you can't see this, but I'm picking the SendGrid content up above there. There's a lot of content classes. All right, so mail is going to be another one that's right there on the top. And then SendGrid. Okay, and then request. And then method. And it looks like we have one more for a response. So we want the SendGrid domain. All right, so and then we have an exception that could be thrown. Let's just go ahead and add that. And that's just, again, it's just command dot, and it'll go ahead and give us a list of options. So first thing is the email. This is the from email, so we're going to make it fullstack clouddeveloper@gmail.com. Okay, and then we've got our email that we want to send. So we're going to send it to the email that we're passing in, because that's the one that's coming to us from the form. Okay, we've got our from there, and the mail is going to subject, and then a to, and then the content. So that's how we make a new mail. And then that's the same variable we used, so we don't have to make a change there. So that's good. Let's go ahead and take a look. It's just going to set the method, set the endpoint, and then actually do a send. So not much to it from here. Let's go ahead and make a couple more changes. We're going to want to change the subject. And let's change it to full stack cloud developer let's see, registration, course registration, let's do that. And then let's send our, set our email content. And okay, that's code that I had from another time I did this. So you've been added to the list. And then we'll say we'll notify you when registration begins. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that, and then we'll restart the server. So I was Control-C, and then I just run the same Maven Spring Boot run command, and then our server's back up. So let's go ahead and send an email. So I created a test email account too, so it's fullstackclouddevelopertest@gmail.com. So let's go ahead and send the email there. I'm going to have to type it out because I haven't used it yet. And so this is the test one. So that way the from is going to be from fullstackclouddeveloper@gmail.com, and the to is going to be to that same version with the test at the end of it. So there it is, and we should have an email in our test account. So there's our email, and it says course registration and exactly our message. So sending the email worked. Okay, so let's take a look at this email though. A couple things. It's getting sent from, that's correct, and then there's this via SendGrid. Probably don't want that. And then it went to the right test account, so that's good. So it's mailed by SendGrid. We don't want that, so let's go ahead and change how that works. So to change the via SendGrid, we're going to want to authenticate our from. So we're going to go to our SendGrid account, and under settings, we're going to go to sender authentication. So then we want domain authentication, so that way it'll go ahead and authenticate our domain when emails are sent from it. So let's go ahead and put in our source, our host. So that's going to be Google Cloud as the host. And then we don't need any branding. Okay, and then what domain are we sending from? So we're going to do full stack cloud developer.com because I have this domain. And then it's going to want me to add a couple of names to it. So this is verifying with SendGrid that I own the domain, so it can send the emails from that domain. So now I'm just going to go over to Google Domains, which is where I registered that domain. And then I'm going to add a few DNS entries so that SendGrid can verify that I in fact own this domain. Let's see, no domain yet. So let's see. Let's say I added these records. I'm in AWS is where it is. I didn't do it with Google. So this is Route 53 in AWS is where I added these. So your domain could be from wherever you registered it. So I went ahead and added those records, copied exactly these in there, and I verified them with their verify process. There's a verify button way up at the top right. So that's how I verified it. And then I'm going to change where the email is coming from now. So let's call it registration at fullstackclouddeveloper.com. So now when I send the email, that via send grid should be gone. So let's go ahead and restart the server. Okay, and then let's send this test email again. All right, we'll click the button, and we get back the email. And so let's go ahead and now we see that the from is registration, and that via send grid is gone. So now it's registration at fullstackclouddeveloper.com, and the via is no longer there. And then you could see the mailed by is from a fullstackclouddeveloper.com email address. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching. In the next lesson, we're going to go ahead and do something with this console log statement. Hi, welcome to Lesson 8 of the Full Stack Cloud Developer Preview course. In this lesson, we're going to show a registration message to the user after they click the Notify Me email button. Let's get started. Okay, the first thing we're going to want to do is find a Bootstrap modal. So let's go ahead and type in modal and Bootstrap. We're using Bootstrap on our front end. That's our template framework. So we're going to go ahead and use Bootstrap for modal. And let's go ahead and click on this one. And it explains how a modal works. And it has a nice code example that we're going to use. So that's how you use the JavaScript, and that's what it's going to look like. So we're going to go ahead and there's a few of them here. Static backdrop, that one's kind of nice because it makes it so you can't click outside of it. And so let's see what that looks like. Okay, that's nice because see, when I'm clicking it doesn't, you have to actually acknowledge the button. So that's good. So I think that's the one we want. So let's go ahead and copy this. Okay, and then let's go back over to our project. Not wanting to jump there. Okay. Okay, so then let's open the folder. I didn't have it open, that's why. All right. So now let's go into our HTML file. So it's going to be under source, main, and then resource is static, and then our index HTML. And I'm just going to paste that code down somewhere in here. It's not going to be visible at first. So let's just go ahead and put it down here. And it's only going to be visible when we show it. So it's an invisible div right now. So let's go ahead and format it a little bit and then make some changes. We don't need that. So we just need the modal. And then let's highlight this and indent it in properly. We need one more indent in here. Okay. So now let's change a couple things. That's where our content's going to go. So I just had 3 dots there. So let's go ahead and put a message in here. So you've been added to the list. And same as we sent for the email. We'll notify you when registration begins. Okay, so then we need this modal to pop up. Let's go ahead and change this title so that it pops up with the right title. And let's just say we'll notify you. Okay, and it's got that name. And we've got extra buttons that we don't really need. So let's just go ahead and make our close button the OK button for us. And let's make it primary so it shows up as the right color. And then in our code where we had the console log statement, let's go ahead and show that. So we're going to go ahead and paste in that static backdrop name. And then we're going to say modal show. And this is on that Bootstrap page. Remember when we saw the JavaScript. So that's how we pop that up. And now when we run this, refresh the browser. And we've got our message. That's it. Thanks for watching.
Hi everyone. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to add simple authentication to our Spring Boot application so that users have to log in for certain URLs that are on our website. We're going to eventually end up with login with Google. This lesson also assumes that you've been through the how to set up a Java development environment, because we are going to use some of those skills learned there. So the first thing we're going to do is start our Spring Boot application. We're going to start a brand new one so that we can experiment with it. And we're just going to keep all the defaults here, and then we're going to name our artifact my application like we did before in that first lesson. And then we're going to go ahead and add a dependency for web, and then we're going to learn how to add dependencies and figure out what they should be going forward to add more functionality to our application. So we're just going to start with web first off. We'll generate the application and then unzip it, and then we'll open it with Visual Studio Code. Okay, that was in the downloads folder, and I had downloaded it before, so it's in my application too. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what we have. We've got under source main Java my application, and so this is the generated one, and we don't really modify this one much, and it's asking me to add Java 7 support, so I must not have added it to this account before, so I'm going to go ahead and add that now just by clicking on that button, and it's going to install all the Java support in Visual Studio Code. And then I want to go ahead and import the Java project. I should say always here, but I clicked on yes. So this installed the Java extension pack, which has support for the Java language, and now it's loading up. Okay, that's done. And if I click on that, it'll go ahead and show what it did. So we don't need to see that now. So let's go ahead and close that. And we also don't need this overview. So let's close all these windows that we don't need. Okay, and that's our application. We don't modify this one. So let's go ahead and see what else we have. Let's go to the instructions. What's next? Okay, so we added Maven Java. So we took all the defaults that are specified here. Now we have our application. So the first thing we're going to want to do is add a web controller so we can pretend that we have different paths on our website. We're not going to actually build out a whole website, but we can fake it right here with the web controller. And we're going to give a few paths to make it look like we have a web hierarchy. So we're going to add the web controller here. And then I don't recommend copy paste, but I'm going to go ahead and do it here. And I mean, it also proves that this works. So just replace the whole thing if you copy paste it. I really recommend typing it out because it will help you. So we've got 4 paths here, the root, and then we've got app, and then a couple more paths underneath that to make it look like we have a website hierarchy. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and start the server. And we could start that inside of Spring Boot, which is kind of nice. So we could click on the application itself, and then you'll see these run and debug links up above it. If we click on debug, it'll go ahead and start it in the terminal inside of Visual Studio Code, which is nice. And it's running on port 8080 as it says here. So then we'll take our browser to port 8080 on localhost. And hello is what we have in our controller. And that's for the root path. And so that's that right there on slash. And then on app, we have it print out app. On we have something, and then underneath something, we have something else. And each of those print out something. So let's go ahead and check that out. So app is one step down, and then something is another step down into a path, and then something else is another step down. And we're doing this so we can secure certain paths and not others. And we'll be doing that a little bit later. All right, so we checked each of those links there. Okay, and if you changed your port, we can you could go ahead and change the links up there, but you know what your port is. And it should be 8080 by default. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is add some simple authentication. So our POM XML file, which is our Maven dependency management file, we're going to go ahead and add a dependency, and we're going to add it on Spring Security. So let's go ahead and clear that out, and we'll add the dependency. We'll just type the word security up here, or start to type the word security. And Spring Security shows up. So we'll click on that, and then if we hit Explore, we'll be able to see the generated POM file. We don't need the whole POM file, we just need the piece. So let's go ahead and grab that security starter dependency, just like it says here. And we're going to add it to our POM XML file. So we'll open that, and then I usually just like to stick it right after the first one there, and then try and indent it properly for formatting. Okay, and so now we have that added in, and let's see what's next. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add the security settings to actually have it do authentication. So we're going to create a web configuration file, and then we're going to do the username and password authentication inside of the application. We would typically have a database for this, but we're just going to go ahead and fake it for right now, because what we're actually trying to prove is that we need to log in for certain paths. So let's go ahead and create a new file here called webconfiguration.java. And then again, you should type this out if you're learning. I'm just going to copy and paste. And then if we type that or paste that in, we've got our controller, and you can see here that it's got the HTTP method and the password. So if we go ahead and start our browser or our server, so we just hit the stop button right up here, and then we'll go ahead and go to my application and hit the debug button. And we'll go back to port 8080 on that. And you'll see now that we have to log in to go to any path. And you'll see that on in the web controller and the web configuration. So any path, if we put in the right username and password, we will get in. And there it is. And the username is admin, and the password is password. So that's what it looks like. And we'll see here that we're going to go ahead and, instead of using the browser's static dialog that shows up, we're going to go ahead and have it add a form, and we're going to progress that to our own custom form. So we're going to modify this a little bit to add form login right there. So I'm just going to copy paste again into the web configuration. And then we'll see that form login was added, and an and is necessary in there to actually be able to add the login. So the next step here is to restart the server again, and then try to navigate to the link and see what's different. So we'll stop the application, the server, and restart it. And then let's go back to the browser. And if we go to root, we have to log in. And now this is a different type of form, different style of login. And there we're in. Okay, so now we've got form-based login, and you can see here we can get to our paths. All right, let's see what's next. Okay, now the form looks different, and we're going to add a logout now. So let's go ahead and add to our configuration the ability to log out just by simply adding an and log out to the end. And then Spring Boot will handle the logout for us. And we'll put that right there. So HTTP basic, we're still using basic authentication, and now logout should be possible. So what we'll do here is when we restart the server, we'll be able to go to the /logout path, and that will actually log us out of the application, which will require us to log in again. Let's go ahead and refresh here. Everything's still working. Let's go ahead and log out. Are we sure? And so this is all generated by Spring Boot. And then here we are back at the login page that's saying we've been signed out. Let's sign back in. And there we are. Okay, so logout only works on form-based login. For the basic auth, where the browser manages it, and where Google's managing it later on with login with Google, that logout doesn't work. It's managed by the browser in one case and then by Google in the other case. All right, so now we're going to add a template engine called ThemeLeaf, and that's going to allow us to customize our login template. We could do it without ThemeLeaf, but it does make it easier. It's integrated with Spring Boot, and it makes it easier for us to add the login capability to the page. So let's go ahead and see how that works. So in the POM file, we're going to go ahead and add ThemeLeaf right here. And we got it the same way we got the security. We just went to the Spring Initializer and copied the dependency. Okay, now that we've got ThemeLeaf, what's our next step? Okay, we've added it to the POM, and now we're going to add to our configuration where form login is actually going to get the login page from. So we're going to give it a path to call that will actually put in our custom login page. Let's go ahead and go to our configuration, and right there where it's form login, let's go ahead and right after that put in login page and fail your URL. And we'll just indent the permit all. Okay, and then for logout, we want to go ahead and have it redirect, because remember how it gave us that message, are you sure you want to log out? We're going to avoid that message, and we're simply just going to log out and go right back to the root folder. So let's go ahead and add that here. And you'll see the little red line in Visual Studio Code. That means it doesn't know what that class is, so I'm going to import that. I hit, on the Mac, I hit Command dot, and I believe it's Control dot on Windows. And so here's what's changed. We went ahead and added our login page, and then the logout the redirect straight to the root folder. And then we removed the basic auth because we're not going to use that anymore. Let's go ahead and cut that out. Okay, and now we have forms-based login entirely, not using basic authentication. Okay, and so that's where we added our path matcher, so we can say this path redirect to the root folder. Okay, and so now we're going to go ahead and add our login HTML. It says index HTML there, it's actually supposed to be login HTML. I changed that later. And we're going to put that in the templates folder. So that's where ThemeLeaf templates get read from. So we're going to do new file login.html. And again, you shouldn't copy paste, but I'm going to do that here for the video. And then here I'm reminding us that I named that wrong. In the video it's going to say index, and I'll probably edit the video later on. But for now it says index. It's supposed to be login HTML. Alright, so that's pasted in, and we have a basic form with username and password on it, and then there's a little error section down here at the bottom. So it's going to do a post to the login handler on the server, and we're using ThemeLeaf, and that's going to go ahead and translate that login URL to whatever it's supposed to be. And then it's going to translate an error attribute in our model, and it's going to, where it says error message here, it's not going to do that message, it's going to do whatever the error is from the server in that paragraph in HTML. Okay, and so now we need a mapping for that login and the login error. So let's go ahead and add these two functions to our web controller, one for the login path to have it read the login HTML page, and then one for login error. When we have an error, it's going to read the same login HTML page, but it's going to paste in the error message right here using the model attribute. So let's put that in our web controller down at the bottom. And then again, it doesn't know that, so I'm going to import that in. You could right click to get that up. Various ways to actually have that menu option show up. And there's an explanation of what that's going to do there. And then we're going to go ahead and log in with a bad username first and see what happens, because that way we can see our error message. Okay, we hit the app folder and we're going to log out. Okay, we were supposed to redirect there. I don't think I restarted the server, so let's see what happens here. So we don't have our custom form, so I didn't restart the server. So we'll have to go back and do that. So I'm just going to log in one more time. So we see that bad credentials message. So it's definitely not using our custom setup. So let's go ahead and go back and let's restart the server. So I'll hit stop. And then let's restart. Okay, we're back up and running, and now we should get a different login page. So I'm going to go to the root folder, and there's our login page. Not as pretty. We can make it pretty later, but it's got functionality. So username, and we're going to do something that's going to fail, and we'll see our error message. And there's our error message that came from the server. And then we'll log in properly, and now we're in. And now we can go to all the paths because now we're authenticated. Okay, so now that we have the whole site authenticated, let's go ahead and restrict access just to the app folder and anything below it. So we're going to change our configuration a little bit. We're going to allow everything to go to root, and then anything that's in app or under is going to need to be logged in. So let's go ahead and add that right above here. We're just going to go ahead and paste it here, and we're going to remove the any request authenticated, because that means anything gets authenticated. Now we're going to limit authentication to just the app folder and anything below it. And then our root folder, so /*, means anything under it, that is going to be allowed without authentication. So let's go ahead and restart the server. And what was the instruction? Okay, we need to log out first and then go to the root URL. So let's do that. And we should be able to get there without having to log in, which we had to log in before. So now we get to hello without login. And let's go to app. Now we have to authenticate on app. So / or root is open and app is not. So let's go ahead and try and ask, and that worked. Okay, so now let's go ahead and add sign in with Google. So we have forms-based authentication now, custom form. Now we're going to go ahead and add the ability for a user to use their Google account to log in instead. So let's go ahead and type OAuth2 is the client. We just started typing it and it showed up. And then we're going to copy and paste that dependency. So it's OAuth2 client. And we're going to go ahead and paste that in our POM XML. I'll put it underneath theme leaf here. And then I'll correct the indentation. Okay, and then the next thing is that's our dependency there, and then we're going to want to change our configuration again, and we're going to remove the form login because we don't need that, and we're going to add OAuth2 login. So let's go ahead and do that now, and there's where we're going to put that, and that's ones to add in, then we're going to remove the ones above it. So no more form login. Okay, so we're going to copy that because we're going to need it. And let's go back to our web configuration, and let's go ahead and highlight the lines we don't need and remove them, and then we'll put the OAuth2 login there. Wait, let's try that one more time. add the new line first. Okay, now it's there. And we're getting some red. Okay, that's better. It took a while for it to recognize it. Okay, and let's go ahead and restart the server and see what kind of login we get. So we might want to log out first. Now we were using form-based before, so we could still be logged in. So we'll have to see how the browser's going to react. It depends. So let's restart our server here. Wait a second. We have an error. Application failed to start. Why? Client registration repository is not set up. Oh, our application properties is supposed to have our OAuth configuration settings. So we need a client ID and a client secret. So basically a username and password to Google that would allow our application to go ahead and use Google's Google login to access it with our username and password. So basically client ID and password. So now we're going to go to Google Cloud. And in the first lesson, we learned how to set up our application. So we have an application that we can use here to get our credentials. So we're just going to type in login with Google, and then we'll follow their quick start. We're actually going to skip around. There's the credentials part right there, and that's what we need. So we're going to go ahead and create a new credentials for an OAuth client, and that's all we need from this page. So let's go ahead and click on the credentials page. And then here you can see I've done this a couple of times. And so we're just going to do a create credentials, an OAuth client ID. And for our application type, and this is the application that I started before in the other lesson, the very first lesson actually. And then I'll just take the default. We could actually give it a better name. All right, so here it's going to be localhost. Now, if you have a custom domain set up, it's going to be whatever that domain is for the URL that's going to be calling from. Now this is the one that we're going to redirect to. So when they're logged in, where do we want them to go? Do we want them to go to what endpoint? And so Spring Boot actually has one for OAuth, and Google is set up for a certain thing there. I don't know what it is right now. So let's go ahead and we'll configure it, and then we'll come back and edit this with the right path. So let's just go ahead and open up the instructions. Let's see. Let me reopen them. Hold on. Get that window out of the way, and then so I gotta scroll back through the instructions to where we were, and we're on the OAuth setup. So we're down here somewhere. No, a little bit farther than that. Oh, there it is. Okay, so we already did this step. And here's what we need to add. So we need to put this in our application properties file. So I'm just going to copy that. And I'll paste it here. And it wants our client ID. So let's go ahead and get that. So that's the client ID right there. So let's copy it. And we'll replace client ID right here. And then we need to put in the secret. So let's copy that. Okay, so now that's configured. Let's remove that blank line up there, and we'll just add one to the bottom. It's not necessary, but I like to do that. Okay, and so then we'll hit OK on this. We don't need that anymore. So now let's go ahead and get that address, because I can't remember what it is. And it does give you an error message and tells you what the path is supposed to be. That's where I got this from originally. But let's go ahead and skip that error part, and it's login OAuth 2 code Google. And so let's go ahead and modify that, and we'll just paste that path in to the end of our domain. And so you'll see that there. And now when we save, this should work. Okay, so back to the instructions. We've done that. We restart the server. Okay, and the server is still not happy, but that could just be a timing thing, so hold on a second. Oh wait, no, I know what it is. For some reason, this run from here doesn't download all the Maven dependencies, so we need to run Maven, and I could run it right here. But let's go ahead and open up a terminal window. instead. So what's wrong is it needs to download some dependencies for the OAuth to work, and that run debug right there doesn't actually do that. And so starting it again here won't do anything. We'll still get the same error message. So what I'm going to do now is go to the terminal window and just run Maven. So I'm going to go to where I downloaded it. So it's in our downloads folder, My Application 2. And yours could be somewhere else. And then I'm going to run the Maven command here. So on OS 10, it's ./mvnw clean install. And all it's going to do is clean out the old files and install the new ones. And you can see here that it's downloading a bunch of dependencies that weren't gotten from the Visual Studio Code run debug function. And we could have done this in Visual Studio Code, but this way I know works for sure. So build successful. So all that really needed to do was download some files. So now if we hit run debug here, our server starts properly. And now it's accepting traffic on port 8080. So that's all it was. So let's see, we restart the server. We're going to log out and then go to our root URL. So here we are unauthenticated, and that's okay. So let's go ahead and hit log out, and it brings us back there. Now let's go ahead and try app, something else, and now we have login with Google. So then we'll pick our username, and now we're authenticated, and we're in. So that simple, we have now login with Google. And that's pretty much it. You might need to clear your cookies beforehand. And for the Spring Boot security reference, here's the link. Please like and subscribe below. Thanks for watching.